Hi, Gladys.
Hi. Trying to send everybody's
I was
Gladys.
Oh, okay. Is that it? Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this month's webinar of PAASE. So, and I'd like to thank all of you who are here with us. So, to our colleagues, scholars, and friends joining us from the Philippines and from abroad, good morning and good evening. On behalf of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, it is my pleasure to welcome you to another session of the PAASE webinar series. And today we are very honored to feature Dr. Laurence Delina, an Associate Professor of Environment and Sustainability at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So his talk, Justice-Driven Renewable Energy Transitions for Vulnerable Philippine Communities, comes at a time when the country continues to confront climate disruptions and vulnerability that disproportionately affect those with the fewest resources. So, as scientists, engineers, and advocates of evidence-based policymaking, we have a responsibility to examine how renewable energy transitions can be inclusive, equitable, and empowering, and not just technologically sound. So this session invites us to think deeply about how science, policy, and governance can work together to drive meaningful climate action. And more importantly, it challenges us to consider the lived realities of communities on the front lines of environmental uncertainty. So thank you again, Dr. Delina, for accepting our invitation. And I encourage everyone to please engage, ask questions, and contribute to the broader vision of advancing science here in the Philippines. So again, I would like to call on now our moderator, Dr. Dan Ibarra. Thank you for joining us as well. Maraming salamat po.
All right. Salamat. Thanks, Gladys. So, good morning and good evening, everyone. I just returned from the Philippines and back in the US now. I'm eager and excited to be the moderator today for this event and excited to introduce Dr. Laurence Delina, Associate Professor of Environment and Sustainability at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He has expertise in sustainable development regarding vulnerable populations, climate, and sustainable energy transitions. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot about that work here today, and has a significant publication record, as you can see on the slide, including 4 books on sustainability and climate change related topics. Dr. Delina holds editorial positions with several journals, Energy Research and Social Science, PLOS Climate, and the Journal of Environmental Studies and Sciences. And he's a former Rachel Carlson Fellow, a Bollock scientist like myself, and a visiting fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, and earned his PhD from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Laurence Delina for his talk. And once he's done with his remarks, we can have some questions and interactions with the audience. So over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dan. A very good morning, everybody, and also very good evening to those who are joining us from abroad. Yep, indeed, it's really good to be back. Yeah, I was first introduced to PAASE and became a regular member actually sometime in 2020 or 2021 or earlier, when I was a Balik scientist at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, in late 2019. Yeah, so it's really a pleasure to be here this morning to share some of our, not necessarily recent, but it's still, I think, very, very valuable and significant piece of work that we did together with Oxfam sa Pilipinas. This has come a long way, actually, but my work on renewable energy transitions has begun probably about 10, 15 years ago, when the word transition is still something that is very, very niche. And I'm very, very fortunate actually to have been working with very smart, very dedicated colleagues in the Philippines and also abroad. So I really would like to say thank you to PAASE for having me, to the Department of Science and Technology for also generously providing some support when I was a Balik scientist at the University of Philippines in Diliman, as well as the University of Southeastern Philippines in Cagayan de Oro, where I actually for both engagement, I work with colleagues in those universities as well as outside the universities, talking about or working on energy transitions in communities. So this talk that I am, so just very quickly, I am from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So we're a very young university. We're celebrating our 35th year next year, but we are one of the highly ranked universities in Asia and the world as well. So I came from the Academy of Interdisciplinary Studies, a special school within the university at the Division of Environment and Sustainability. So I've been here in HKUST for the last 6 years. I just recently got my tenure, so I'll most likely be staying until retirement. We'll see. It's really nice to be actually stationed very close to home. My work is really on the Philippines and other parts of Southeast Asia. So Hong Kong is a really nice space to do work in this area. So also very quickly, yeah. So please allow me, let me also introduce our research group. So for the last 5 years, our research group has been working diligently on the critical examination of intersectional vulnerabilities arising from climate risks. So we're not just looking at energy transition per se, because transition is just one part of climate risks, but we also look at extreme weather events, extreme heat, typhoons, and we try to integrate both the physical risks with transition risks. And we are not just siloing our attention to a particular risk, but we also look at the intersectionality and the cascade, the compounding of these risks. So climate, which is basically environmental, as well as how existing vulnerabilities in terms of the economic, political and social risks compound this risk that we are experiencing. So we focus on lives. Lives are very important, but also taking a look at livelihoods, particularly on capital assets. So again, there are all multiple dimensions of capital assets. So you have natural capital, human capital, physical capital, etc. So I mentioned earlier that I arrived in Hong Kong probably 6 years ago in 2019, September of 2019. And then I also took a little bit of a break right after I arrived in Hong Kong and joined the University of the Philippines, Delina as a balik scientist, very short term. And I really want to mention the generosity of Professor Joey Ocon, has been a collaborator since then. We have been publishing a lot on this area, particularly in the understanding of energy transitions in island communities. So far, I have like helped mentored a number of PhD and master students. Most of them are actually Filipinos. Those in green you can see are the remaining students I have before I take my sabbatical: Ryan, Sharon, and Johan. So Sharon is actually a professor at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Johan is an American citizen of Filipino descent. Yeah. So those in black have actually already graduated. The privilege to mentor also postdocs and also masters in philosophy. So we are a very mixed methods group. So we use a variety of methods: interviewing, also of discussion, surveying, spatial work. But the really key and focus of our attention are vulnerable populations. So our study participants involve older populations mostly, but also those living in rural communities, island communities, indigenous populations. Young people are also considered vulnerable in some contexts. Coastal communities are also one of our key study participants, especially for our work on islands and typhoons, and making sure that energy systems become resilient on those places. Our study sites I've mentioned is really on Southeast Asia, but we also do work in mainland China. I have Ryan, who is working in Bangladesh and mainland China. Indonesia is also a focus of our attention, but most of our work is really on the Philippines. So Erica just finished her MPhil, her Masters of Philosophy, and she returned to Palawan State University. She looked at resilience of energy systems in typhoon-prone coastal communities in northern Palawan. Ivy, who has returned, has just finished actually her PhD. She returned to the University of Southeastern Philippines as a professor. So I'm saying this because some of our audience actually are looking for potential place to do their PhDs or do their MPhils or to explore study abroad. So if you are interested, please reach out later. We have a group website for you to check our work, our research outputs, etc. But if you want, we can also schedule a one-on-one on Zoom, or if you happen to be in Hong Kong, please feel free to reach out. I'm really, really happy to talk and chat about our programs, etc. So what I'll be talking about this morning is arising from a work that I did with Oxfam sa Pilipinas. I'll talk about that in a while, but it is really based on 2 recently published papers in world development perspectives and in energy research and social science. So if you are interested in downloading, or if you cannot download these papers, let me know, and I'm happy to actually provide you copies. As I mentioned, this is a work with Oxfam sa Pilipinas. Okay, I think I have a slide with Oxfam sa Pilipinas, but I'm not seeing it anymore. Where's that? I really would like to actually acknowledge Oxfam sa Pilipinas, and I don't have it anymore. All right. So, but really, this work happened in 2021 to 2023 during the pandemic. Yeah. So maybe for many of us, the pandemic is now long gone history, bygone history. But really, a lot of things that happened during those periods. So our data collection approaches, methodologies were actually affected, but we were still able to collect data. So we use survey data and also focus group discussions and interviews in 3 vulnerable communities with regards to their perceptions of energy transition and renewable energy as well. So at this juncture, I really would like to say thank you. A lot of gratitude. Maraming salamat po to Oxfam sa Pilipinas, Lot Filesco, Dante Dalahaban, Pati Miranda, Iggy, Luigi, Cheng Pagulayan, and Leia. They're very, very helpful during those period when we were trying to understand what is the perception of Filipinos living in vulnerable communities, and we'll discuss what vulnerable communities in a while with regards to renewable energy and the transition to renewables. But before that, I really would like to unpack first or define first the key concepts that I'll be using during this talk. So justice-driven. So energy justice, just energy transition, these words have become very common these days, especially if you work in the transition or climate space. So when we talk about justice-driven, these are basically initiatives, also policies aimed at ensuring fairness, equity, and inclusivity in processes, benefits, and burdens associated with the transition. So it's an advocacy work when we talk about energy justice and just energy transition. That's why Oxfam sa Pilipinas really want to put this front and center in their work. So it's an advocacy for addressing historical injustices. And that's also very, very crucial context as well. Because injustices in the energy field, in the energy sector, is really historical. Disparities as well as the marginalization faced by specific groups, particularly in the context of energy access. So energy access is different from energy transition. Energy transition is basically the shift from a particular fuel to another fuel. And in this context, it's from fossil fuels towards renewables. I will be briefly describing what that transition is in a while. But energy access is very crucial, especially for energy poor context. So those who have no access to energy services, in particular electricity, clean, affordable, reliable, and stable supply of electricity. So that's basically about energy access. So energy access and energy transition actually are different things, but they can come hand by hand or together, and they can actually be addressed, and they can actually be reached. The ambitions for both can be achieved simultaneously. In the context of renewable energy, when we talk about justice-driven approach, we talk about empowerment, so how we empower populations, and in this context, vulnerable and marginalized communities. Again, by not only providing them access to electricity, but really renewable electricity, but also ensuring that they are participating in the decision-making process. Now, this is a little bit of very different in terms of how energy systems are being understood and recognized at the moment, because we don't care actually where the electrons are coming from. As long as we have the lights, we have the electricity, we can do our washing, we can cool a space in case it's very hot. The electrons that flows through the line is not necessarily a big issue, but at the moment, because we just let Meralco do that work for us. If you live in provinces, you let your electric cooperatives do that service for you. But in energy transition, you become actually a potential participant in energy generation. So we have this context or concept of prosumerism, where you are not only a consumer of electricity, but also a producer of electricity. So that prosumerism is actually something very tangible element of the energy transition. So in the past, where you have like very large scale energy systems generated in conventional power plants located far from the service areas, in a renewable energy scenario, generation actually happens very, very close to where it is used. So you can put a solar PV panel on your rooftop, which means that you are consuming electricity from the energy that you are also generating. So that's basically what prosumerism is about. But going back to the justice-driven energy transition, it involves understanding and addressing the ethical implications of energy policies. So what I'm trying to drive here is that when we talk about energy system, it's not only a function of engineering. So we also need social scientists. There's an ethics dimension actually when we talk about renewable energy systems, and energy transitions. But in the context of justice-driven energy transition, the real focus, or one of the focus, is the distributive justice. Who benefits from the transition, or benefits from renewable energy resources? At the same time, who bears the cost of the transition? So when we talk about energy justice, there are at least 4 tenets of energy justice. One is distributive justice. It's basically what I have talked earlier. Who benefits and who shoulders the cost? That's distributive. but also recognition justice. Recognition justice is related to energy access. Who are accessing renewables? And are they actually accessing it? So that's recognition. There's also procedural justice, which is about participation in decision making. Yeah. What makes energy transition really, really interesting is that it allows you, me, everyone actually to participate in energy systems. So it's no longer the province of Meralco, your electric cooperatives, your ERC, etc. But everyone can actually participate in energy decision making. So that's basically about procedural justice. But there's another fourth. The fourth tenet is very crucial: restorative justice. So restorative justice is about addressing and making sure that we do not commit injustices procedurally, distributively, and in terms of recognition injustice. So that's basically about it. And also addressing historical marginalization. So that's restorative justice. How we make sure that everyone's injustices in the past actually don't happen now and in the future. So those are the four tenets of energy justice. And I will be using them in as sparingly as I discuss as I continue in my talk. Renewable energy transition is another context. And by now, I assume that many of us know what this means already. So it's about a shift, it's about change, it's a process of shifting away from fossil fuel-based systems to renewable energy sources. But this is now very, very, very common. It is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It's also achieving sustainability. So it contributes to achieving your climate targets. If your country has a climate target, then energy transition most likely is part and parcel as a contribution to meeting that target. So the Philippines is signatory to the Paris Agreement, and the Paris Agreement actually requires countries to submit their nationally determined contributions to emissions reduction, also to adaptation, etc. But for the purpose of this talk is really on the contribution to mitigating climate change. And that's really about transitioning from dirty fossil fuels towards perpetually available, highly sustainable forms of energy that's provided by your renewable energy sources. So renewable energy sources are usually wind, water, and sunlight. So you have solar energy, wind energy, offshore and onshore wind energy, hydropower, largely micro hydro. Large hydro is very contentious. I actually also study large hydro. Is it sustainable? Is it renewable? What is it? Is it clean energy? What is it? So it's really contentious, largely because of its social and environmental impacts. If you dam a river, particularly if you are affecting communities who have been living in that river ecosystem for millennia, and that has a lot of social and ecological impacts, not only on populations and people, but also for species that have been thriving in that ecosystem. So that makes large hydro actually very, very contentious. But it is clean. Nuclear energy is not renewable energy. So these are just the two conventional energy systems that we examine actually in my class on energy resources. Are they renewables? Are they sustainable? How do we categorize them? So, but for the purpose of this paper or for the purpose of this talk, when you talk about renewable energy sources, this pertains largely to those that are non-contentious forms of renewables. So you have solar, which you can include your solar heaters, not necessarily very common in the Philippines at the moment, but it's really, really an important renewable source of energy in cold geographies. So that's what solar heaters. There's also like solar PV. That's very, very familiar, I think, for many of us. So you put your solar panels on your rooftop. So some of our street lights in the Philippines are actually also powered by solar. There's also CSPs, or concentrated solar power, concentrated solar thermal, which is large scale facilities where you have these mirrors reflecting your sunlight into the top of the tower where steam is produced, and then it generates electricity. So that's basically solar. In wind, I have mentioned already offshore and onshore, and this has been also a very interesting renewable energy to observe, because this, I mean, as a policy analyst or even as a regular person, a regular citizen, right? We always see wind farms in Guimaras, in Ilocos Norte as tourist spots, right? So those are onshore wind energy, but there are also offshore wind farms. Offshore wind farms have been gaining strength, gaining ground in a number of countries, including in China, Vietnam, etc. But I really want to see actually offshore wind farms happening in the Philippines very soon. Hydropower, again, micro hydro, we have plenty actually in the Philippines, particularly in the northern part, in the Cordilleras. I also did work in there. And biomass. So biomass is very an interesting source of renewables, especially in the context of communities in the Philippines, because we are an agricultural country, right? So most of our provinces actually industries are still agriculture. So feedstock coming from agricultural residues, bagasse from sugarcane, even rice, maize, or corn, etc. They can actually produce renewable energy. So that's basically what we talk about renewable energy transitions. And in the context of the Philippines, it involved replacing traditional energy sources, such as coal and gas, with clean, renewable, and sustainable alternatives. So it's really crucial actually when when we talk about or we talk about energy transition, largely because it is essential for meeting our climate targets. It has its big mitigation potential, largely because majority of the global emissions are coming from energy. So therefore, the focus should be on transitioning towards renewable energy. But it also increases energy security. And this is very important in the context of the Philippines. When we talk about energy security, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean reliable electricity. It could mean efficient production or generation of energy. It could also mean stable, reliable, and cost-effective generation, as well as cheap electricity for all. And of course, promoting sustainability. But when we talk about renewable energy transition in the Philippines, what I would like to highlight here is that, again, it's not just a province, or it's not just a function of electrical engineers or your energy economists. It must consider the social and the economic dynamics, as well as the specific needs of various communities. Why various communities? Why really focus on communities? Largely because renewable energy are very distributed, right? I mentioned earlier this concept of prosumerism, where everyone can participate in energy generation. Yeah, so it's really place-based, place-specific. So what is happening in QC? And Quezon City is very big, right? In North Quezon City, West, South, it's very different. So the specific needs of each of these districts should also be understood really contextually, largely because, again, renewable energy systems, and I'm talking mostly of solar here in the context of QC, is really distributed, particularly vulnerable ones. So the focus is really on vulnerable ones that may experience disruptions or changes in their livelihoods as energy systems evolve. So I'm very interested actually in understanding the context of vulnerability in my work. Yeah. And how it relates with livelihoods, sustainable livelihoods. Because livelihoods is very crucial, but when you attach the word sustainable before livelihoods, that makes a different context. And if you consider it or regard this context of sustainable livelihoods vis-a-vis vulnerability, that makes things actually very, very important, and also very, for me as a researcher in this field, I got really, really interested. So what are vulnerable communities? Let me just briefly define what are those. So those are a group of people who face higher risks of harm due to socioeconomic conditions. It could be due to also to their geographic location. So again, place is very important. The context of space, the context of place is matters when you talk about vulnerability. And of course, their historical marginalization. Again, just going back again to this notion of restorative justice that I mentioned earlier. There are a lot of vulnerable populations, but for this talk, I'll just focus on three: low-income households, rural populations, and informal settlements, and those with limited access to resources. So in this work, we focused mostly on three vulnerable communities: those located in typhoon-prone areas. So I think this is already like a given. Everyone knows and had experienced stronger typhoons. Informal settlements in urban context, they're also considered vulnerable, or regions heavily reliant on coal. Yeah, heavily reliant on coal. This when I started this this work, I'm not necessarily looking per se on coal, but so when I was a postdoc at Boston University, I got attracted into the study of coal in the Philippines and wrote a few papers on that. It's also is very personal to me because I am from South Cotabato, and South Cotabato actually holds the largest deposit of lignite coal, one of the dirtiest coal actually out there in the Philippines, if not in Asia. So these communities typically experience systemic barriers that impede their access to energy, education, and economic opportunities. So when we talk about energy transition, vulnerable communities, not just about energy actually. So it has a social, economic, and even educational implications. So during energy transitions, it's really, really important to consider the unique challenges of these communities. Yeah. Place-based again. So I really, really focus on what is happening in the space and the place. How unique, how specific those challenges and vulnerabilities are, and also how to actively engage and involve them in the decision-making towards the transition. So not just about decision-making, but also really throughout the implementation cycle or the implementation process. So from inception all the way to the retirement of your energy systems, vulnerable communities must be included, must be engaged to ensure that solutions are equitable and just. Yeah. So because back in the days, or even now, we still see coal-fired power plants being erected and being constructed in places where people actually live for years. And this has implications in terms of public health, etc. So it's really, really crucial to bring into conversation with these communities, with these populations, when we're talking about energy systems, including, of course, renewables. Because renewables, although it has sustainability, it has climate dividends, environmental and social benefits, it also have trade-offs. We have also issues with regards to potential injustices arising from the deployment of your renewables, particularly if it is utility scale. If it is a level of a solar farm, if it's a level of an onshore or an offshore wind farm, there are a lot of things that are that can also go awry when you deploy renewable energy. So for this talk, again, Oxfam sa Pilipinas, thank you so much. We really look at how electricity access, again, because access is very crucial, although it is a separate concept than the transition, they can go side by side. Income sources, because we are looking at livelihoods, and household demographics. So demographics, how is a household actually comprised of? How many are older persons with disabilities, women, children, etc. Because this is what really Oxfam really wants to unpack at the level of the household, at the level of the community. So we look at 3 places in the Philippines. All of these are considered vulnerable based on the definitions that I have provided earlier. So in Metro Manila, we studied the Barangay Batasan Hills in Quezon City, which exhibits informality in terms of settlement with access to the electricity grid. Of course, that's Meralco, but facing informal connections and potential for distributed solar energy. We also look at Eastern Samar, particularly in an island municipality of Dolores, which is in the Philippine Typhoon Belt, rural, coastal. Recently electrified during the data collection, probably if I'm not wrong, about just 6 months actually. 6 months when we did our survey, it was just like 6 months before that they did have access to electricity. Because it's relatively new, the cost of their electricity is relatively high. It's also unreliable. It's an island, so it's diesel powered, and it means that it's not 24/7 available. With potential for solar and also wave energy. Zamboanga Sibugar is an interesting case study. It's in the northern part of Mindanao, where I came from. Particularly the municipality of coal-dependent Imelda municipality. It's also rural, coal-dependent, with frequent blackouts and concerns about the impact of transitioning from fossil fuels. I just would like to make a short note here, because in the Western context, when you talk about energy justice, just transitions, it's really looking at how workers in the coal sector can actually move away from that industry towards another. So when we put in this case of Zamboanga Sibugay and coal-dependent Imelda municipality, it's really, really interesting for me to also understand that this dynamics, because I read the literature in the Appalachian and also in Poland, etc., where when we talk about energy justice and just transitions, it's really about workers and also about labor transition. So it's nice to have these variations in terms of not only all of the 3 major islands are represented, the major vulnerabilities are also examined, etc. So again, I'm really, really grateful for Oxfam sa Pilipinas for providing us the opportunity to really study these communities. So we did household survey, and we conducted it in March 2022 across the 3 study sites using quota sampling, so very purposive. So 60 responses from each location, so that gives us about 180. So with Oxfam, they deployed their partners and at these three locations, 3 places, 3 study sites. So the focus of our survey is on energy access. The frequency of their use of energy is also related to access. The perceptions of renewable energy technologies, their concerns related to the energy transition, to the transition away from what they have at the moment, economic, environmental, institutional, social, and technical factors. It's very multidimensional that shape those perceptions of their potential adoption of renewables. So we didn't necessarily use the word transition in this context. We really framed it as moving away from what energy sources they are currently utilizing towards more renewables. So the 2 papers that I have mentioned earlier actually reports different things. So for the first paper that we reported for World Development Perspectives, it was co-authored with Sunny Afable, who is from the University of the Philippines Population Institute, and Chloe Chan, who used to be my master's student. So we used mean agreement levels and various statements from the survey with pairwise comparisons using correction to identify significant differences between study sites. So we really would like to understand what are the challenges or the different challenges and similarities between informal settlements in Quezon City versus typhoon-prone area in the Visayas, and also the coal-dependent region, municipality of Imelda in Zamboanga, Sibugay. The second paper is about using multivariate analysis to assess how electricity access and household characteristics shape the respondent perception. So we look also on a 5-domain framework. So this is where the multidimensional understanding of the various challenges, the various aspects of the transition came in. So what are the key insights from this paper? So in the next probably 10, 15 minutes, I will just quickly go on what we found from this work. So place matters. So again, I have already mentioned that really, when we talk about energy transitions or renewable energy, it's very site specific. It's also geographic. The context of geography really matters. It's really place specific. So what we found is that regions with limited electricity access at the time of data collection, such as Eastern Samar, they show more negative perceptions of the challenges compared to more electrified areas. The challenges actually of moving towards renewables. So there are also region-specific differences in their perceptions of the environmental as well as the technical impacts. Therefore, again, because this is really the context is really geographic, it's really place-specific. Policies should also be tailored specifically on that space, on that place. So that actually is not necessarily new finding, but for the context of vulnerable communities in the Philippines, it is important. We also found divergence in terms of respondents' perception of the barriers between the divide between rural and the urban. So for rural Eastern Samar, they are open to the transition, but there are strong concerns about cost and reliability. Cooking or cultural practices influence attitudes towards renewables. Because there's actually a section in the survey questionnaire where we ask them what is the likelihood of you foregoing your use of charcoal or firewood in your cooking and instead using an electric cooker that is provided with electricity provided by renewable solar. So people are saying no, we could not do that. So this is very tangible in the case of rural Eastern Samar. In Sibugay, where you have this coal-dependent municipality, there's a greater skepticism towards renewables due to the potential livelihood disruption and land use concerns. So the framing is really crucial when we ask questions in Zamboanga, Sibugay. So if this this coal mining town actually closed business, where would you go? So that actually provides them this idea that, our livelihoods will be disrupted if we put more solar and then the coal mines will be closed. In urban Metro Manila, this is in Batasan Hills, financial capital is the main hurdle. So please understand that actually Batasan Hills, the residents there, already have access. Most of them have access to 24/7 electricity. Whether these are legal access is not the question that is not one of the questions that we asked, although of course it is also material to the understanding of energy access. But for them, electricity is available 24/7. And when we introduce the question of what is your perception if you are to move away from renewables, the first thing that comes to mind to respondents in Batasan Hills is about the peso sign, so the financial capital. So that's their main hurdle. They're also concerned about local resource availability, but this is comparatively lower, largely because most of these respondents saw already how solar operates. So you just put in solar panels on your rooftop and then immediately enjoy the benefits of having solar electricity. This is still place specific, so site specific constraints. So rural Sibugay shows stronger technical, economic, and environmental barriers compared to urban Quezon City, where respondents there face different concerns. And again, it's centered really on capital access and financing mechanisms. How are we going to actually put up the solar panels? We want that, but we don't know where to access financing. This again, I think a very interesting insight from the work from the study. Social dynamics, leadership, and gender norms. They also vary across sites. In urban areas, they tend to show more gender egalitarian attitudes towards actually who will be leading the transition. Is this women? Is it men? And participation. But in rural areas, in Imelda and in Dolores, they exhibit more traditional or mixed norms in terms of who could actually participate in the deployment of renewables. Because in one segment of our survey, we ask we have this statement like women can also participate in the renewable energy deployment, and provided them examples like women can install rooftop solar, something like that. So there's a mixed reaction in terms of gender attitudes towards renewable energy. So, but we also look again at the household level. So household composition also shapes the perceptions of vulnerable residents, vulnerable communities. The presence of older adults correlates with higher perceived economic challenges, reflecting vulnerability and concerns about reliability and cost. So seniors tend to be very wary about the cost, about the peso sign, right? How much is the cost if we put in renewable system in our house, on our rooftop, or in our community, etc. So those with children tend to show more favorable attitudes towards sustainability in some contexts. It is a very crucial insight. So especially in the context of our lived experiences, the lived experiences of these vulnerable communities with extreme weather events like typhoons, extreme heat even. So they are now, there's evidence, this particular finding provides an evidence that parents actually are really, really concerned about sustainability, about the future of their children. But there's the strongest and the consistent pattern on the association of older adults again with economic concerns. So older adults, and we're talking about age 50 and above. So they are really, really concerned about the challenge related to the cost of the system. So income sources also influence the outlook or the perceptions towards renewables. So an agricultural household, and these are basically also in Dolores, and then partly also in Imelda in Zamboanga, Sibugay, they perceive higher economic challenges than those with formal employment, likely due to the vulnerability to market fluctuations as well as the price of their electricity. This is almost like a given. The formally employed households tend to have a more favorable view of renewable energy and the transition towards renewable energy, presumably due to their stable resource for potential investment. But this is very important, broad willingness to pay. So regardless of whether you are rural, whether you are coal dependent, whether you are in the typhoon-prone area, or whether you are considered informal settlement, across all sites, there is broad acceptance of renewables and willingness to pay extra. So there is actually a willingness to pay It's an acceptance of renewables driven by dissatisfaction with current electricity service. So this is a very important gist of information. It's not just about climate change. It's not just about sustainability, but it's really about also their satisfaction of what their providers are currently doing. So satisfaction with regards to energy services, particularly electricity, is really, really crucial. And that makes people actually, our respondents, say that, yes, we are willing to pay and we are really, really want to move towards renewables. Again, place-specific framing matters. So it's just like I'm going to close the talk now. Energy transition must be tailored to local context, to the culture, to the resources at hand, and governance to be acceptable and effective. There's a need to actually integrate, to adopt this integrative approach. That renewables work best when the technology is basically your hardware, your software, your skills, and the practices. Because we also asked actually in our survey, are you willing to be trained? So what are you willing to be trained to deploy, to manage, to maintain a system? Orgware is also very crucial. So this pertains to institutions, local government institutions for the permitting process, etc. Governance and also financing. And financing, the peso sign is always there. It should be aligned with daily community life. So again, energy justice framework is really central when we talk about energy transitions, the deployment of renewables in vulnerable Philippine communities. But these are just three. If you can still remember there, I have mentioned actually 4 tenets of energy justice. But just for the time being, distribution. When we talk about distributional justice, it's about allocation of the cost and the benefit. And that should be equitable. And underserved communities often bear higher costs, but they actually tend to have fewer benefits. Let me just develop this argument a little bit further. So when we talk about underserved communities, these are communities that actually don't enjoy reliable and also cheap access to cheap electricity, because there are plenty of electricity service, right? There's electricity for transport, electricity for industries. But for the time being, let's just focus on electricity service, which is electricity. And it's very common in the Philippines, actually, regardless of whether you are in those communities that I have been mentioning for a while now. Even regular, common Filipino, our households, we don't have 24/7 access to electricity, right? Blackouts, brownouts are very, very common. But it's underserved communities, actually, those who really, really feel the brunt of not being able to access reliable power is higher compared to those who actually living in more affluent, quote unquote, or steady or have access to steady and reliable power. Recognition justice, the second tenet, is about recognizing who needs to actually be prioritized. So policies should acknowledge and incorporate the needs as well as the identities of marginalized groups, particularly older adults in agricultural communities in the decision making. And procedural justice is highly emphasized in our data set, actually. So they want to participate in energy decision making. So we have to think about to make sure that governance frameworks, institutional arrangements with regards to renewable energy is inclusive. How can we make sure that the processes are indeed engaging? They engage people in a participatory process, because the literature says, not just literature, but development practice also says that if you involve your end users, there will be more legitimacy and uptake of your initiative. And in this context, renewable energy deployment. So I'm really, really calling for place-specific and justice-oriented policies tailored to the unique context of vulnerable communities, particularly women, also older populations. Have them actively involved in energy transition processes. So they should be part made part of active decision making. That also means that they could also influence policies that affect their energy systems or their lives. It's really crucial to strengthen regulatory and institutional support. Yeah, Filipinos are very best in crafting laws and regulations, but it's not just about crafting laws. It's really about making sure that the laws are implemented efficiently and optimally, right? So we have to address existing organizational gaps by enhancing the regulatory framework and providing robust institutional support. So towards the end of our survey, actually, we look at this dimension, the institutional dimension, regulation, how easy it is to actually get your permits. Do you think your local governments are actually helping you with renewables, with the deployment of renewables, etc.? Tailor financing mechanisms. Again, the Philippine peso sign is very crucial, right? So we need financing to the specific needs of each locality, ensuring that resources are available and also accessible to facilitate the deployment of your renewable energy systems. Integration is very crucial, so we have to promote projects that strike a balance between large scale, because there are, again, farm size, utility scale, and also community scale solutions. This project should be aligned with, of course, the needs of your community, as well as aligned with the cultural practices therein, ensuring that energy solutions are both effective and also culturally sensitive. So access is still a very important dimension of renewables as well as energy systems in the Philippines. So we need to expand electricity access in underserved areas. So this effort must be complemented by, again, place-specific renewable energy strategies that consider the local context and resource availability. Support mechanisms for vulnerable groups is very crucial. So we have to create support systems, particularly for older adults as well as for agricultural households during the transition. This may include financial assistance, capacity building, maintenance support to ease the transition and mitigate negative impacts. So this three actually is what I mean by place-specific policies. It's not necessarily very innovative. We know this already for a number of years, that we need to provide financial assistance, right? Credit no longer works. So we have to think about innovative ways to how to finance these deployments. Capacity building. So we need to make sure that the system actually lives its useful life, right? So you just don't throw them away after like 2 years or 3 years. How to maintain the operations, how to make sure that your system actually remains efficient after 3-5 years, right? That's also very crucial in terms of capacity building. So that's for household scale. If you have a community scale renewables, then how you actually capacitate an organization or institution to basically operate and manage your system. Maintenance support, I've mentioned that already, is very crucial as well for easing the transition and mitigating its impacts. Yeah, because this is about justice, right? Justice-driven transition. So community should be involved, households should be involved, right? So engaging populations directly, so they have their say in the planning and decision making processes regarding energy projects is very crucial. So engagement is important to build ownership and also to foster acceptance of these initiatives. Again, regionally tailored or provincially even at the level of the barangay, right? You have to have those incentives and programs that address very place-specific needs for renewable energy infrastructure. And again, that infrastructure is very dependent on the context of the geography, right? So in some places, solar may be the most optimal system. In some places, maybe mini hydro. In some places, it could be biomass. Social dynamics, right? What are the dynamics of the locality and the unique challenges? So this actually brings in the importance of social scientists, of development workers, not just renewable energy engineers or electrical engineers, right? So they should work hand in hand together to understand the social, the technical, and even the political dimension of the transition. So these tailored approaches will help ensure the successful implementation, hopefully, as well as the sustainability of renewable energy projects. So sustainability is actually very important aspect, because we just don't want to go to a particular island, put up a renewable energy system, and put it in our CSR reports that we did this and do that, then be that, right? And after 2 years or after 3 years, when you go back, there's your solar panel is actually not working. So sustainability of these projects is also essential when we talk about justice-driven renewable energy transitions. All right, I think I have already consumed much of my time, but thank you so much. If you want to reach out, my email address is on the screen. If you want to know more about what we are doing as a research group, there's also a QR code on the screen. I'm now ready to engage in a conversation with you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Delina. That was great. So I welcome people to put questions in the chat. We already have one, which I'll read off in a second. And then also you can raise your hand and we'll sort of call on you. So the first question is from Ben. When solar panels are installed, coordination with Meralco through net metering takes at least 6 months. What's the reason for this long process, and how can this process be shortened?
Yeah, at least you have 6 months in Manila, right? In South Cotabato, I think I have applied 5 years ago, and it's I still have not my I still don't have my permit. So net metering in the Philippines is one of the most important policy that we can actually tap in order to get support with regards to the deployment of your solar. But really compressing the time element, the permitting process is very crucial if you want to accelerate actually the transition. I think the digitalization is very crucial. Making sure that you really look at how you can trim down, how you can shorten the time, how you can design the application process in a way that it is that you don't need a lot of stuff feeding onto the process is really important. Here in Hong Kong, they have this feed-in tariffs scheme, and I think it just takes like a day or less than a day actually to get a permit. So if we can learn from what other jurisdictions, what other countries are doing, what other local governments or what other regulators are doing, and then potentially pilot it in the Philippines and then see what the lessons then we can learn that can be that can actually address this dilemma of the permitting process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that response. Okay, so the next question is from Angeline Lau. Are there theorems or indices to measure fairness, equity, and inclusivity?
These are really qualitative data sets that we're talking about, but we try to actually reduce it into quantitative dimensions. So doing indices could be a way to actually understand the differences and similarities in terms of the variations in how fair, how equitable, how inclusive is the project. I couldn't recall of any indices or any index actually for in that regard. Maybe there are, but I may not just aware. But it's really something that I really also would like to develop in my own work. Really looking at how can we measure, how we can put a value, how I can put a number in inclusivity, in justice, in fairness, etc. So if you have ideas, then Angeline, then let us chat, let us talk.
That's great. Okay, well, Tito, will come to you next after Maria. So Maria Helen Dayo asked, how does energy transitions affect women differently than men? Which you sort of alluded to at certain points.
Yeah. So there's a gender implication actually when we talk about renewable energy. There are papers about the masculinity of power, the masculinity of energy systems actually appearing in our journal in Energy Research and Social Science. How energy systems are perceived to be a manly endeavor. But we are also seeing these pictures, images of women in Bangladesh putting up their renewables on their solar. That's actually a very interesting contrast. And in the justice literature, we are actually looking at gender dynamics, how to make sure that women or those non-men, binaries, etc., are also considered in decision making. So largely this is the masculinity in energy dynamics can be seen in terms of who actually makes the decisions, how decisions are made. And in large boardrooms, we do not necessarily see a lot of women actually participating in energy decisions. Yeah, so it's in that context that there is a difference. But of course, there are also other dimensions where the perceptions of men varies varies with the perceptions of women. Like for example, we ask this question: can women actually, or how is it likely that that women could also be involved in solar deployment? Can they put up the solar panels on the rooftops themselves, as we shown in images in Bangladesh? Can they actually also manage an energy cooperative, a renewable energy cooperative? Can they take leadership roles, directorships in energy companies? Those are questions we also asked in our survey. So these variations in terms of the role, the gender role in energy systems and energy transitions is there. There's a lot of literature that has been published on this in this area, and it's actually very, very interesting and exciting. So we tried to also understand that in the Philippine context, and we saw variations.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thanks for that response. Next, Tito Aliga, if you want to
Yes.
unmute and ask
Thank
a
you
question.
very much, Dan. I have three comments, Lawrence. Number one, I think you're over-analyzing the problem, because one of the conclusions, the insights that people are willing to pay. In other words, and that's across all
Yes.
communities. If it's available, they will pay. So our next challenge will be, it's not anymore whether women will do it, men will do it, children, but how do we deliver the least cost
Correct.
electricity to that community? So that's my
Yeah.
question. So I thought you were analyzing it, because in a community, as we always say, to see is to believe. If they have it, they will do it,
Yes.
regardless
Correct.
of sex or gender or what. The second one is that you might want to look at the experience of what we call the village-based telecoms stations. Because
Correct.
again, the underserved telecoms communities, they have this VBTS. And how it operates, again, there were no social things done. It was some guy said, let's put this up, and people just were happy. They are able to use it. So men, women, it doesn't matter, because again, it's available. Okay, and then we have what we call this portable water stations, water treatment stations. Again, this will replace, or this will, that you can put on top of a creek, and it will purify water. So my point is that we have a lot of things that we can learn from similar situations, and we don't need studies that you did, because again, the bottom line is that, as we always say, zero energy is the highest cost of energy. So if it's available and people can do it, then it uplifts that community. It uplifts that community, regardless of who is the datu or whatever. So again, my point is that if we can have all of these, again, specific, low cost ways of providing electricity, then we can move forward. We can stop all the studies that you're doing and focus on getting things on the ground. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
but I
you.
agree. I agree, but I also beg to disagree on some of the points. The social studies of energy systems it remains paramount. It doesn't mean that we have this technology. People, the recipient population, recipient communities will receive it 100% wholeheartedly. It doesn't mean that way, because it's energy systems are not just physical, technical, and engineering systems. There's also social elements in there. Most of the projects, not necessarily energy, or renewable energy related, or energy related for that matter, are 100% successful, largely because we tend actually to forget that there are behavioral, there are psychological, there are even religious aspects to these systems that needs to be actually understood very well. Yeah, so it's I think it's a disservice if to science if we just think that, oh, we'll just put up a system there and everything will be okay. Everything will be paradise after putting up a water system, a renewable energy system. That's actually a disservice to decades of social studies of science and technology, where we really have to bring out to bring about the psychological, the social, the non-technical elements of any systems, not just energy systems. I also agree that financing renewables or any systems, any technologies is very crucial, and that's actually one element that we need to think about how we can mobilize, how we can design new financial mechanisms to ensure that we are able to deploy these systems in vulnerable communities. Those are really crucial.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your response, Dr. Delina. There's a nice question here from Gladys in the chat. Given the observed challenges, specifically the livelihood concerns of agricultural households in Eastern Samar and the complexities of dealing with informal settlements in Metro Manila, what specific actionable mechanisms can local government units, LGUs, and energy developers implement to move beyond simple community consultation towards shared equitable ownership and management of new renewable energy assets, thereby building institutional trust and addressing regional disparities?
Yeah, this I think is a very important very important question. A challenge really is not about how efficient or how optimal your system can deliver. It's really about sustainability. So I talk about sustainability, it has a temporal element, how to make sure that beyond deployment, your system actually goes a long way it could, right? So 10 years, if not 20 years, that's what we really want. And to make sure that it is sustainable is really, public engagement is very crucial. It's not just, oh, we gather the community, we talk to them about this design, this plant that we're thinking about, this solar PV that we are planning to install on their rooftops in their community buildings, in schools, in barangay halls, etc. It's really about capacitating, making sure that the skills are transferred from the technical persons to those who are actually using the or will be using the system and will be taking care of it for years, if not for decades, hopefully, and how to make sure that these systems, these institutional arrangements actually could work. Because we have seen a lot of local, village-based, barangay level cooperatives that have failed, right? So understanding actually how to make sure, but there are also, of course, successful cooperatives or social
Right, yeah.
social organizations at the local level that have worked, right? So perhaps we can take lessons from those, from both the failures and both successes, on what
Yeah.
particular. But it's actually we could not say that after 5 years everything will be okay, right? Because there are a lot of variables affecting the longevity and the sustainability of organizations. So it's not just about the technologies. Technologies are very important. Financing is very important. But really, I think to increase public buy-in to make sure that your systems runs, be there, it is able to actually deliver what it's supposed to deliver for a long time. You really need to capacitate people. So it's not only about the skills, but also managerial activities, etc. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken. Again, it's very place specific, culture specific. Yeah, there's a lot of things that needs to be done in order for renewable energy systems to really thrive and be sustained in local places in the Philippines. So LGUs have work to do, but you cannot just let the government do it, right? There should be, again, public buy-in. People should really think about ownership, right? This is our system. We make sure that this actually thrives, that this is successful over the years.
Hi, can I have
Gladys, you want to respond? Go ahead.
yes, Can I just have a follow-up question? So, congratulations, Lawrence. So it was very comprehensive and you were able to identify all those factors, right? So what are your next steps? No, you already finished this project. You were able to identify all the different factors. You kept on saying it's place specific. So what's your plan? What's your plan to really implement and help these communities? Kahit isa lang doon sa mga that you were able.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that was the challenge of Tito. I know. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So this project is actually an Oxfam project. And
Mhm.
this is basically, I was tasked to understand the lay of the land.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's basically, what is the state of the art? What is happening now, Lawrence? We want to understand so that we can actually prepare interventions. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think it's really nice to bring into the conversation these groups actually who have been working a lot harder than what I am doing, right? Really thinking about these communities, making sure that what academics like me are talking are really implemented, or this is being translated into real work, right? And for sure, not only Oxfam, but there are other organizations in the Philippines who are who are doing the hard work in implementing renewables. To deploy multi-scale, not just village level, but also even municipal level renewable energy systems. Yeah. So there are, I met a number of them, yeah, pre-pandemic actually. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to go back to that community after the pandemic. My trajectory has shifted into understanding other vulnerabilities. So I'm now very interested where I'm engaging with extreme heat and its relationship even with renewables, but that is still to be developed. So what I'm doing now is also part and parcel of what I've learned in this understanding of the lay of the land, and of course there are a lot of things that needs to be done. So as an academic, I think my role is really to continue the understanding and also to continue thinking about what could we do, right? And to partner with NGOs, with those who really do the hard work, because there are a lot there are a lot of groups who are doing a lot of things actually in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Again, policy is also crucial because we are a nation that really is very good in crafting policies, but really implementing them. I think there's also the need for reflection, for reflexibility, for
That's-
reflexivity, right? And why our policies remain just policies,
That's right.
where they're not really, yeah.
If I may take
Correct.
the floor again, Gladys. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, we have a friend in Aurora, Misamis Oriental. His name is Banong Zanoria. He set up a biomass plant in their town after he retired from National Power. So he went home, became a missionary, and built a biomass plant. And you know what? The people there accepted it. They elected him mayor. They elected him a second time in 2025. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, you have something like this and it's being driven by a native, not by experts like us, who come and
Mm.
talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But this guy said, I'll serve my people, I'll build a biomass plant, and they elected him mayor because of what he demonstrated. So, the same thing with Piddig, Ilocos Norte. This guy built, transformed their farm communities into a
Mm.
into a modern cooperative. Again, they elected him mayor. Ed Gillian is his name. So what I'm saying is that the bottom line of all these things that it seems to me that the bottom line is that it's important that we have a missionero, somebody who is from that place. Not a Laurence Delina who will tell them this, not a Gladys who will tell them this, or a
Correct.
Dan, or a Liga, but a missionero, a native of that place, and he can make wonders. He will not have to go through any of this gender sensitive, ay wala yun. But he's there to make things happen. So again, one town at a time. One town at a time. Now, of course, where can we find those missioneros? Again, it's up to us. Again, I glad a PAASE guy who might retire and goes back to his town in Iloilo. Let her do it. And I think there's one of them, Gladys, the one who took up silk. I think you have one.
Sino po nga yun?
Oh, yun. So that's what I'm saying. If there's a missionero, the guys who yung mag-asawa na nasa Cebu who set up the academy,
Yes po, yung sa Bohol. Sa Bohol pa yan.
Bohol, that's the kind of thing that will move mountains.
That's Bohol.
Yeah, we don't have to go through all of these studies. Anyway, thank you very much, Laurence. So don't think of yourself as an academic. You think of yourself as somebody who will hit the ground and implement. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Agree. Yeah.
You
We
go
have
to
a lot
South-
of
to
actors like that actually in the
you go
Philippines,
to
like in
South Cotabato.
Romblon.
You go to your town in South Cotabato and do something there. And get away from Hong Kong. Go to your hometown and find out how you can improve the
Go,
life.
Lawrence, that's the challenge.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
exactly.
Anyway,
Yeah.
As I've said, gentlemen, I might be 100% wrong, so don't worry about me. Thank you.
Yeah. I think maybe in the future, right? But at the moment, I think my calling is to be a mentor, to be a teacher. So I'll do my best to become as a mentor, as
Yeah.
a researcher at the meantime.
No,
And who
wala na
knows, right? In
researcher.
5 years' times, my calling will be
Hayaan mo na
different
yung
and will be to
researcher,
go home.
Lawrence. You go back to your hometown and create magic there. Bayaan mo na yung Hong Kong. Walang mangyayari doon. You might become the president of HKUST, but what happens to your hometown? Nothing.
It's actually a call not just for Laurence, right? It's really for everyone in the room
Yeah,
to get our hands really do the hard work.
Correct.
Yeah, and return. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
and do the work. Yeah, thank
And
you,
do
Sir
the work,
Tito.
Okay. Do we have any final questions for Dr. Delina? All right, I'll turn it over to you, Gladys. Thank you, Laurence, for such an engaging talk, and the back and forth and the questions was really insightful. So go ahead, Gladys.
Thank you. So Lawrence, so maybe next time you'll have time to do Balik Scientist again, BSP stint, and then we'll engage Tito. We have to invite Tito to help us, right?
Yes.
Ko?
I volunteer.
Yeah, Sir Tito is always there actually. Yeah,
And then thank
he
you.
has been there since mhm.
Since I first met you,
Happy
Lawrence.
to do that. Yeah, let's set up
Sige, gawin
something.
natin. I do it in your hometown.
Yes, we'll do that. Okay,
Okay.
so I would like to thank Lawrence. And the next slide, please, Feb, could you show the certificate of appreciation to our speaker? Okay, yeah. So here is a certificate of appreciation presented to Laurence Delina for generously sharing your expertise as our speaker in the PAASE webinar titled Justice-Driven Renewable Energy Transitions for Vulnerable Philippine Communities, held on November 21, 2025. And your valuable insights on science, policy, and governance have enriched the discussion and inspired us with meaningful engagement toward climate resilience and sustainability. Presented today with our deepest gratitude, signed by yours truly. So again, Lawrence, thank you very much. We expect you to be more involved in our PAASE, in all of our activities, and hope to see you next year during the
Thank you.
2028 PAMS. And
Thank you very much, Lawrence.
yes, do we
Thank
have
you po.
announcement? Yeah. for the upcoming events. Yeah, so we'll have, this is just a proposed activity. We have a webinar in partnership with NRCP on December 4th. That will, and we'll be sending out more final PubMats for this. And the next activity is we'll have our PAASE year-end event. This is my last 2 months as PAASE president. So I'll be presenting the report. At the same time, we'll have fun. We'll have some games, and songs to celebrate the end of the 2025. And this is scheduled on December 6th, 9 a.m. Philippine time. And this will be December 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So to make it more festive, please wear something red. And this is a Saturday, okay? December 6th is a Saturday, not the usual here in the Philippines. So, and then are there more? Wala na. So can we have a photo op? Maraming salamat po sa lahat na nag-attend. Again, Dan, please open your video camera, and then thank you for agreeing to moderate this webinar. And then we'll have, hopefully we'll have one more before we end the year. Okay, so photo op ba, Feb?
Yes
Okay.
po. Sige po. 1, 2, 3. Smile.
Can you
Isa
include,
pa po. Isa
can
pa
you
po.
include Dan in the yung naka-spotlight?
Ayan. Okay po. Ayan. Sige po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay na po.
Hi, March. March is
Salamat
there.
po.
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Maligayang
Merry
Pasko.
Christmas.
Hi,
Hi,
Good morning, Ben.
Yeah, we see you.
Thank
Please
you,
attend
Laurence,
the
and
Good
thank you,
luck.
Dan, for
Salamat.
Thank you,
moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you po. Thank you po.
Very much.
Ingat
Thank
po
you, Dad.
tayo.
Thank you,
Bye.
Laurence.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Salamat. Bye-bye.
Po.